It's helpful to kind of walk. I think it's helpful to kind of walk through just a little bit where I came from and then how I got to the US. I'm originally Canadian, and then my career here so far, because I think it's not linear. And I didn't start in banking when I left college, or university, sorry. So I'm from Vancouver originally. I moved to the East Coast to go to school at Queen's, and I did my Bachelor of Commerce there. And basically kind of did the whole, am I going to go to consulting, finance, where am I going to end up? Did a lot of internships, ended up going to the UK and doing an internship with Goldman Sachs in their kind of like back office HR team. Decided that wasn't really what I wanted to do. And so when I graduated, I actually ended up just not taking the offer and going and working in public policy was always something I was interested in. And so I went and worked for a think tank right out of college and worked at the Fraser Institute for a little bit and did economic development research there. And they actually turned me on to getting a master's in applied economics from Hopkins. And so I moved out to the US, moved to New York, and ended up working a bit at the Clinton Foundation as well, just because New York's expensive. I don't know if anyone remembers the exchange rate back then, but it was terrible. So, good life lesson. It's always good to understand where your capital is coming from and anticipate funding needs, even on a personal level. So yeah, it was great. I mean, I was doing my master's, I was working at the Clinton Foundation, again, doing kind of economic development work there, focused on the Americas, focused on healthcare, really interesting work, very easy work-life balance. It's interesting. A lot of the folks that were quite senior there, though, were really encouraging of going to a career of either investment banking or consulting or accounting, similar to the narrative I was getting at Queen's, which was just get a core skill set of something, because even if you end up just not liking it, you have a core skill set to fall back on and then also just build on. So I ended up meeting a few folks from Lazard at a women in business conference up at Columbia. So sidebar there. Definitely go to conferences if you're in new cities and you are looking for jobs or meeting new people. Even if you don't go to the school, a lot of times they'll allow external attendees, and it's such a great place to meet and network with folks. So highly recommend doing that. Got me my job. Within like a couple months, I was joining the analyst class of 2016 at Lazard in their M&A industrials team. So I did that for about 2 years, specialized in aerospace and defense, went through the whole grueling 2 years of investment banking, and decided I wanted to stay at the firm, because as part of those 2 years, I learned a lot about the firm, and it felt like a bit of a waste just to kind of walk off the floor with the 2-and-out program. That's pretty usual. So I ended up moving over to what I thought was kind of a happy medium of not just leaving for PE, but staying and advising private equity shops. So I ended up moving to the private capital advisory team, which for anyone who doesn't know what that is, because it's pretty ambiguous, that's a team that basically helps private equity firms fundraise for their either first-time fund or whatever fund they're currently on. That's our primaries team at Lazard. And then there's another side too, that's one of the biggest growing areas in the private equity market right now, which is the secondary side, which is effectively helping various private equity firms find liquidity solutions for various assets or holdings that they currently have. It's a lot more complicated than that, but for now we'll leave it there. And so I was at Lazard for about 5 years. Really good experience. I think it really showed staying at a larger place when you start out is actually pretty helpful, just in terms of the exposure you get and the just various opportunities you get to. While I was there, I seconded with the London team and really got some unique opportunities at being part of a larger organization. So that said, I just moved to Coller about 4 months ago. It's been great. I really wanted to go and do what I was doing at Lazard in-house, and I need a Coller team from years of working with them on transactions. So it was a pretty natural fit, and it's been great so far. So it gets me here. I live in New York. I'm on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. If anyone's ever around, happy to meet for coffees and say hello. It's always great to see fellow Canadians. So with that, I think that's kind of the quick and dirty overview.
All right, thank you so much for that. Your journey is highly inspiring. So a few ground rules before we get started with the event today. Please keep in mind that this session is supposed to last 30 minutes, so we will stop taking in questions or answering them after 7:05 or 7:10 at the latest. Please also keep in mind that not all questions may be answered because our panelist is having their own unique experiences, and they will be answering based off that. You may all start putting in your questions in the chat and we can get started. Also, we would suggest that you avoid turning on your mics because there may be a lot of confusion when multiple people are speaking at the same time. However, when the panelist is answering the question that you have put in the chat, at that moment, you can turn on your mic if there is some follow-up or you would like for more clarification. And even if you would like to turn on your camera, please feel free to do so. We will highly encourage it. All right, we will wait 2 minutes for everything to come in and then we may start. Also, Kristine, if you can, if you would like to look in the chat as well, and there are some questions that you would like to answer, please feel free to do so. Also, a reminder to everyone here that this is a live Q&A and this is the time to ask whatever you're doubtful about. Please also stay until the end of the event as we will be announcing how our giveaway will work. And please follow us on all our social media platforms to know who the winner will be. The link will just be put in the chat. All right, everyone can start sending in their questions and we can get started.
Do you want me to start answering them as they come in?
Yes, sure. So the first question is, what inspired you to go into your designated profession?
I mean, I think it's funny. When I was younger, I was always kind of attracted to the idea of having a calling or something that, you know, I've always wanted to do. And that was actually law. I wrote the LSAT 3 times and never became a lawyer. But so, you know, it was, I think, a lot of happenstance and circumstance and just trial and error, because, you know, investment banking is kind of a weird thing. It's very hard to describe. There's so many different facets of it. And I think it's really tough unless you're actually there day to day in the trenches at the desk to really understand if you like it or not. So I think what attracted me, it was really just trial and error. I really didn't like M&A. It wasn't a good fit for me. And going into the private equity space ended up being really great. But even that was a little bit, you know, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I didn't quite love being on the advisory side. It was really interesting. It was a great way to learn, but it kind of led me to understanding, okay, I really want to do this in-house. So I think what inspired me to get there was really just being inspired to try new things. And that if you meet interesting people that you really could see yourself working with, I think that's a really good kind of North Star to follow. I ended up randomly pitching with the private capital advisory team for a South American airline project that the M&A team just really wasn't fit to manage. And we co-ran a pitch with them and I learned all about their business. I had no idea what they did. And that's when I kind of thought, hey, these guys are really interesting. They seemed really, really nice. And, you know, it was a pretty unique team, and set up a coffee chat. And a few weeks later, I was on the team. So I think it's really about being open to new experiences and just kind of using a good barometer of trusting your gut when you think there's something interesting and chasing it, because opportunities don't always come along. And if you do think something could be interesting and you know have a door open to try it, that's kind of the inspiration for me that leads me to my next stages in my career.
Thank you so much. The next question we have is, what career pathways did you consider before going into your current profession?
Yeah, law. Law, first of all, and then public policy. So I was really on a public policy track. So backstory of that is I used to be on Team Canada for public speaking and debate. So it was kind of a rite of passage that 90% of those folks ended up going and becoming lawyers. I did not, but it was on the kind of roster. And if we go way back, I think my original career path was to be a fashion designer. So, you know, it's been a process of discovery, but I think, you know, there's some interesting threads that actually link a lot of them together. For example, you know, when we're doing projects and there's legal processes, I love getting involved. So there's clearly some interest and passion there. I love dressing up for work. There's your passion. You know, and generally speaking, really enjoy business and finance. So it all kind of came together in the end. Do you want me just to keep, I have the chat up. I can just start like answering them if that's helpful.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, just make your job a little easier. So next one I see is how important is networking for my career? Incredibly crucial. I wouldn't have a job. Networking was how I met the folks from Lazard. I was just at a table with some ladies at a women in business conference, like I said, at Columbia. we ended up chatting. I think it's one of those things where in business school, or at least at Queen's, they really emphasize having a really good elevator pitch for yourself, just kind of, you know, what you're interested in, a little bit about who you are. It's quite quick and easy to digest, that if you're in those kinds of situations, you can just kind of sell yourself really quickly, and, you know, you're really practiced at it, and you don't have to kind of scrounge and ramble on. I think that's really helpful. And I kind of at that point knew I wanted to go into investment banking. So it was just very quick draw. I knew what I wanted. They're the perfect people to be sitting next to. That was just very serendipitous. And, you know, being able to chat with people and be open to, you know, making those tough asks, because sometimes it's uncomfortable to ask and kind of say, hey, do you have anything open, or are you recruiting? But it is important just to find your moment and to use it well. So networking is crucial. I also say that's super crucial for your extracurriculars, because I'm assuming people on this forum are probably really ambitious and have other things that they do. And, you know, I attended lots of events when I first moved to New York, and am now part of multiple organizations just because I just went out and tried going to the event. So networking, I think, is so crucial. And I hate the term networking because I feel like it just kind of makes, especially people who've been in business school or any sort of recruiting, think about these awkward, like little circles where you stand around a recruiter and you chat with them, and or like weird, you know, business card exchanges that are kind of forced. But I think networking is, if you actually break it down, is just really all about like social interaction and just, you know, being really open to being a sociable person and finding ways to kind of use that naturally to help yourself in your career, but also make good relationships. And I think that's really important. The networking, most importantly here, has given me a community of people to call family and home here. Because again, I'm from the West Coast, I'm from Canada, and there's not a lot of Vancouverites in New York. So networking has been really good to establish that base. Let's see. Difficulties adapting to new environments in New York. Yeah, very. I'm very obviously from the West Coast, although I've been here 6 years now and it's slowly slipping away. But yes, it's a very different pace. New York is a microcosm, though. I do not think it's a good reflection of the rest of the United States. It's a whole different conversation, but it is very much a bubble, and it's a very high intense, very, it's exhausting, honestly. And I found coming, especially from like West Coast Canada, that was a bit of an adjustment, but you know, you get used to it. And I think there's a lot of really good qualities of the city. I think the biggest thing is that you get used to not having any of your like core family or network here. You have to start from the ground up. And anyone that's telling me that they want to start a job in New York, especially when they're, you know, brand new in their career, their network, especially their professional network, isn't that established. I really do heed the warning of, hey, just make sure that you're ready to hustle a little bit. Like if you don't have a lot of community here, you're going to have to build that from scratch. And I don't think it gets talked about enough when you're in undergrad, how much work that is, especially if you're in a job that's requiring, you know, 80 to 100 hours a week. That gives you a very small margin of time to go out and build a community. So it's doable. It's definitely tough, but if you want to do it, you definitely can. Let's see. How would you describe day-to-day life at your place? Okay. I can definitely give an overview of day-to-day. I'm going to give kind of like an overview of general financial services because there's a lot of similarities, and I think that'll speak to a broader group of folks, because my day-to-day now is just so bespoke. I don't think it's that helpful, but broadly speaking, you know, it's first thing in the morning is really make sure that you don't immediately look at your phone, because if you do, it is dangerous and a spiral, and just, you know, teeth brushing, breakfast, all of that stuff just doesn't happen if I start going to emails right away. So it's get up, try and have some water, take like 20 minutes to just settle before you actually dive into work. That's something I have had to learn, because it's just so easy to just jump, especially when you're working with international offices and emails have already started coming through from their day. So I think that's kind of, you know, really key. And then in terms of, you know, responses and kind of what the rest of the day looks like, it's a lot of, you're gonna have your like core things that you're responsible to do, and they're kind of ongoing. And then I feel like every day is just very different. And it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but it really is. You don't know, especially when you're in a client servicing business, whether it's investors, whether it's, you know, M&A clients or PCA clients, you're basically at the mercy of whatever they need. And that can be really great. And sometimes that can be really devastating for your personal life, your weekend, your sleep schedule. But, you know, there's been an effort to improve that in the industry, and they're getting there. But, you know, it's a lot of answering kind of responses, pulling together diligence requests, turning decks, running analyses for people, a lot of kind of ad hoc thinking on your feet. And back in the day when we were all in person, a lot of kind of just getting up to speed with team members, breakout team meetings, and then kind of having huddles with senior team members to plan out direction and what we're doing with certain projects. So it's pretty multifaceted, and it's interesting. And I think it's a good kind of jack of all trades, multiple hat wearing kind of industry to be a junior person in. And I think it's a great core skill set to start with. So hopefully that's helpful. Let's see. Oh, advice. What advice would I give students who are looking forward to pursue a career? I would say one, really make sure wherever you land, especially in banking, because it's a unique space, really make sure that you are able to develop good social and political capital at whatever firm you go to. And unpacking that, what I mean is you can't just keep your head down and just do your work and do a good job and think that everything is going to just work out for your career. It's not, especially because there's still a very strong, in North America particularly, 2 and out program, which for anyone who doesn't understand that's the anticipation as an analyst when you start somewhere that you've got about 2 years until you're off to private equity, maybe to go to business school and then come back and go back to private equity in more senior role. It's kind of like a traditional path. Very much changing, by the way, because life isn't that simple and people aren't that linear, but it's a common path, and it's a good path for some people. I would say though that it's really important if you come into a firm, don't just think about the exit strategy, because this is a very big industry, but sometimes it's very small. And I think especially when you're operating in these major hubs, New York, London, even Toronto in some circumstances, Hong Kong, you're working with people on a global level, which means you're probably going to cross paths with them again in your life and your career. And that's people you're working with externally, as well as your own internal teams. So the biggest piece of advice is make sure you're building those relationships and keeping them. Part of the value proposition of going into these big banks and putting in these hours is that you're going to get this crazy, talented, interesting group of people that are all going to go off eventually into their own world. And you've got this awesome network that you can draw on for the rest of your life. Huge. So connect people in different parts of the firm, different teams, senior people. Absolutely get to know them and put time on their calendars. No matter how intimidating they may seem, it's always well received. And it's really important to do that. That was one of the biggest assets that I had at Lazard, was connecting with folks, raising my hand for projects that were firm-wide, things that I would never, regularly have to do during my day-to-day, but they just came across. And sometimes it's not going to be offered. You just need to kind of put your foot in the door yourself and wedge yourself in. But I think if you can develop good social and political capital, you're set for your career, and you just keep doing that at every firm you go to, and you have an amazing network to draw on. Kind of ties back to the networking question too. Okay, if you were not doing what you were doing today, what would potential profession? There's like someone who can just like test out sleeping things, or like beds, or something that would be excellent just to like catch up on my sleep for a couple of years. Maybe go for Casper or something. I'm like half kidding on that. I think honestly it would be really interesting to kind of dive more into kind of fund securities and fund law, and understanding different ways to structure private equity funds. I think that's a whole rabbit hole niche that you can go down in law. It's so interesting. I think the closest you can come to to like actually building things when it comes to financial services, right? Because it's a lot of paper, it's a lot of intangible things that are happening, right? Deals happen, but you don't actually build a building, or actually have something physical in front of you. So I think it'd be kind of interesting to go down like fund structuring law, and kind of understand that space a little bit more, because it's fascinating. Or just retire. That would be great too. Are we doing okay for time, guys?
Yeah, definitely.
I think we're doing well. If you see any questions that you think are repetitive, I think you can feel free to skip them or just like briefly mention them.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and just flag me down if we're running out of time. I'm more than happy to. I don't see my clock, so I'll just rely on you. Okay, this is a good question. Managing work pressure. Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard, especially when you're junior and the world seems to be collapsing every time you get bad feedback or you mess something up, which you will, right? I mean, you're new, you're being dropped into this crazy intense environment where you're being asked to do pretty complicated and thoughtful things very quickly. And you have to make them look beautiful as if you've been graphic designing for 5 years of your life. And you're asked to do it from day one. And it's hard. It's a lot on your shoulders. And, there's so many conversations happening right now about the way that folks are being trained as they roll into these banks and what's actually making sense and whether this is efficient. Again, a conversation for another panel. But broadly speaking, managing pressure is knowing yourself and knowing your own kind of breaking points and what you need in order to be your full and healthy self. And I think that is now very much encouraged at a lot of banks. It has not always been the case. Even when I first started about 6 years ago in the industry, it was a lot less supported. Now there's a lot more team and firm-wide backing to, taking mental health breaks, making sure that, you do have a workout or some sort of exercise or, just seeing a counselor or something that you have in your life that helps you be your best version of yourself, that you're keeping that up. And don't let work take that over, because work will it'll just spread. It's kind of like you drop water on a paper towel cloth, right? Like it just kind of like seeps in and it's going to go everywhere until it fills the whole cloth. Like think of that as your life. Work will do that if you let it, and you have to set boundaries. So the pressure, it's manageable if you're able to take care of yourself. So you're not just running on empty all the time, because otherwise it can crumple you. I think that is one piece. The second piece of it is, and this takes time. I mean, I can't teach perspective. You can't teach it, but understanding that this is just a job and this is a career path. It is not the end all be all. If something goes wrong, there is no one dying on an operating table. And I think a lot of bankers say that. I don't think all of them believe it. So keep that in mind, because I think as soon as you start to make things up in your head that, oh my gosh, if I don't get this back out in the next hour, it's going to be horrible or whatever. It's not, right? Like someone might get annoyed with you, but whatever, let them get annoyed, right? Like you'd rather be right. You'd rather feel good about the work you're producing than have the pressure of that person kind of in your head. So I think mindfulness training is really good. I know that there's a lot more support to that. Meditation's good. Just really being able to kind of clear out the noise, focus on what you're doing, do a good job. That all takes time and it takes a lot of practice. But I think between kind of managing your boundaries and then also just being thoughtful about your own internal narrative about how you're perceiving things is really crucial to managing the pressure, because it's a tough environment. But it's still a very interesting environment. So pros and cons. Okay, building a good resume, very clean. Make sure that you're highlighting things that are relevant for the job that you're applying for. Make sure you're actually kind of not only just listing things that you've done, but listing the impact. That's the biggest thing. It's kind of like, title, when you did it, what you did, but then also, did you accomplish anything? And even little stats are important. Even if you managed a local charity budget of $1,000 or something, that's important. So put in figures like that so people have an idea of, they were managing money, and, just examples are key. I think that's the biggest thing about resumes. And I mean, this should be not a surprise to anyone, but don't lie, because if you do lie on a resume, people find out and you don't get jobs. There's many stories of background checks that were delayed and folks had already started on the job and they got fired because they lied on their resume. So the biggest thing I can say is, even if you don't think your resume is built up enough, keep it honest, because you just never want that to, bite you later on, and more than likely it will. And that will haunt you for a long time, especially in the financial services space, because it's big but small, like I said earlier. Okay, let's see. Describe the job outlook in Canada compared to the US. I don't know. That's interesting. I think that the market's just bigger in the United States because it's one of the major hubs in the world, right? I mean, Toronto is a large market. It's not New York, and it's not London, and it's not Hong Kong. I think there's a lot of really interesting opportunities that are Canadian and Canadian sub-offices of major American banks, as well as Canadian banks. I generally don't know in terms of hiring or how they fared through the pandemic, but broadly speaking, the financial services industry has performed very well during the pandemic. Obviously, there's exceptions and subsectors that haven't, but broadly speaking, it has done quite well. And so, I mean, there's been a ton of hiring in New York, and they're calling it actually the Great Resignation. globally because there's been so many people. This isn't just finance, so it's broadly speaking, but especially in finance, the great resignation is that there's just so many people that have jobs. They're quitting jobs and leaving for brand new jobs that are paying them more and giving them either title bumps or, there's just something that makes them a little bit happier. So there's a ton of opportunity right now, kind of broadly speaking in the industry. As a subsect of Canada, I do know that Calgary and Toronto seem to be the places to be. Being from Vancouver, I just didn't find the market that compelling. You're dealing with a lot of really small teams and you're very much natural resource focused. Obviously, again, exceptions, right? I can't make too broad sweeping of statements because there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. But I personally think that for my path, it was great to start in New York just to get the exposure, live away from home, build up that networking skill set, and understand, the Wall Street mentality and what this whole game is all about. So hopefully that was somewhat helpful. It's kind of a tough one. Let me see. Okay, for people starting off their professions, what advice would I give them? Be authentic. That's the biggest thing. It's so easy to get caught up and do whatever other people want to do or tell you should do. Business school's tough for this. Sometimes it can be very pressuring to, fall into a certain category or, make up or kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say perform, but kind of operate into a certain archetype of, the quote unquote, typical successful person or whatever. It doesn't exist. And I feel like when you leave the confines of an academic institution, you do kind of see that there's so many different paths to take, so many interesting roles. Finance is not the only place to make money. That was definitely a very big myth in business school. And it's so far from the truth, especially when you're looking at per hour basis. It's actually really terrible. That's one of the things you're told when you're an analyst is never calculate your per hour because it's not great. And so I think it's, having a really broad outlook as to what you want to do, be your authentic self and let that kind of be, again, that North Star. You're going to be happier. No great, career or whatever you want to do is going to be easy. There's always going to be difficulties, but focusing on that authenticity is huge. All right. Do you have time for a few more? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's do the COVID one. Yeah, COVID impacting my career and what was the shift like is the question. The shift was way easier than I think a lot of senior people anticipated because as a junior banker, when this happened, we were already doing work in random locations remotely. I think it actually was nicer because the firm actually paid for us to have full home working session or working setups. So that was really great. But it was really nice. It was nice to be out of that environment to really just do your work, but have the comfort of home because if you're working, until 1 or 2 a.m., it's just something more comforting and calming about not being in that environment because even the energy of the space can be pretty stressful. So I think there are some strong benefits to it. I think it was the financial services weekend, a lot of us can just work from home. It really wasn't that big of a deal. New York apartments, okay, is small. That's been a little challenging, but at the same time, generally speaking, it's been fine. And, the world has changed. And I think the upside is that it wasn't just the banks who all worked from home. It was the clients. It was, the service providers. Everybody was from home. So it kind of, we all ended up having to be forced to work together. The downside is that there's just no off button, especially in small environments. I live in a 600 square foot apartment. It's not big. And you don't have an extra office space that you can just close the door on when you're done and leave it for the night. It's, in your living room, it's in your bedroom, where your full setup is. And that is tough because you're potentially hearing emails come in all throughout the night, or, even if you silence it, it's just kind of there. And there's some visual symbolism of constantly having your work staring at you. So I think a hybrid model is a really nice way to go. I think a lot of firms are trying it. And I'm interested to see how long that sticks. But overall, it's been fine. There's been a lot of people who have had a much tougher situation that needed to be in person for their job. So cannot complain at all. Next one, keeping yourself focused. Staying focused is it's honestly pretty easy in terms of just focusing on work. Just the speed of which things come in makes you have to be focused. I mean, I think also being able to take breaks though is crucial, and circling back to that point about taking care of yourself, knowing what you need to be the best version of yourself is absolutely huge. If you need to take a run, every morning to feel good and feel accomplished and ready to be focused for the day, do it. Don't let work make excuses for you and not take care of yourself. I think that's huge in being focused. Generally, hydration, sleep as much as you can, and just spend time doing completely different things so that your brain has time to process what you've been doing at work, and you can find creative ways to kind of integrate your other experiences to help yourself do smarter and more interesting work. I think that's so huge and is such an important element of having extracurriculars. So, all right, let's see. Salary, I don't know, guys. I'm sorry. I don't have a lot of barometers. I think that it's more in the United States. I think you are generally paid more, but I don't know that definitively. So I'm just going to kind of pass that one. My favorite project so far. I'll talk about my time in investment banking because that was actually one of the biggest projects that I've done recently in the last 2 years. That was pretty interesting. So we did what is called a single asset continuation fund. It was for security companies, basically taking that out of a company's fund and rolling it into a new vehicle and then finding new investors to buy out the old ones. It was one of the biggest that had ever happened. So it was pretty interesting to work on. We were trying to get it done in, a short period of time. It ended up taking almost a year, but it was just one of those processes that forced the whole team to really get in the trenches. Like I'm talking junior analysts all the way up to managing director, really worked together as a team, and we got it done. And it was a really interesting project, huge learning curve, and just like great kind of movie-worthy team effort that brought everyone together. So that was pretty cool. I think that's it.
So I actually wanted to mention that most of our audience are actually youth going into university, and I found it very intriguing that you went to Queen's Commerce and then Johns Hopkins. So do you want to speak a little bit about that, your experience at those universities?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Queen's was great. I thought it was a good base to go to for Queen's Commerce. Back then, now it's called Smith School of Business. Just as a good baseline, they really sold themselves as giving you a holistic view of the business world and, kind of finding your niche and what you're interested in. And they did just that. I really enjoyed the economic side of things. Again, kind of pulling back to that public policy, interested in kind of law, that kind of side of the world. And so doing my master's in applied economics at Hopkins was also phenomenal. I will say though, I mean, Canadian undergrads are really high quality. And that's one thing that both my fiance and I, he lives here as well, also Canadian, we've really found is that these undergrads prepare us so well for American master's programs. And I think it's just, we have a pretty rigorous system, and across the board, Canadian undergraduate programs are all very good. And so it was interesting to come here and hear that there's very much a range in terms of what your undergraduate degree prepares you for and how rigorous they are. I guess it's because there's just so many. I'm sure there's whole analyses and papers written on why that is, but I found that we were so well prepared coming from Canadian institutions, and we went to different schools. He went to SFU in Canada, in Vancouver. So it was just interesting to see how well that prepared both of us for our consecutive master's programs. The education here was also very good, and definitely can't complain, but I'm probably biased in saying it, but I thought that my undergrad was definitely more rigorous than my master's program.
All right, thank you so much. This has been great, Kristine, thank you. If there are some last questions, then the audience can put it in the chat.
Or you guys can just turn on your mics or raise your hands. But I think we went through most questions, but if there are any lasting questions, you can do that right now. We'll wait 2 minutes for that, and then we can continue on to our next part.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
No worries. All right, I think all our questions are done. That was quite informative. Thank you so much. And yes, thank you to Anushka for hosting the event today. I know that Kristine took over the questionnaire, and thank you for that. Like, we wanted to make it a little easier for you, but you're right into it. So that was great. We really loved how this event turned out. There was a lot of things that I didn't know personally, because again, speaking from my own experience, I do want to go into something similar that you're doing, Kristine, as well as my top choice is Queen's Commerce anyway. So I did learn a lot from today's event, and I'm sure that everyone else did as well. If you guys have any other questions and you couldn't think of them today, please reach out to us on any of our social media platforms, preferably on Instagram or our Gmail, and we can get in touch with you, or we can get Kristine in touch with you, whatever works well. And we will be putting the link in the chat to our platforms. So Navrapam, I think you'll be doing that. So before you guys leave, we actually do have a giveaway coming up. The announcement will be going up tomorrow on our social media platforms. We have partnered up with Creative Outlet. It's a small business here in the GTA area, and there will be 2 winners again, this time just like last time, and both will have a chance to win a customized sticker plus a logo sticker. So it's high quality, and as you can see, it looks really cute. So this is your chance to win that. The rules to enter into the giveaway, like the additional entries that you'll get, can be found on our social media platforms. But for everyone who has attended today, you will get an additional entry. And if you are a general member, then you'll be getting 3 additional entries into the giveaway. So there's a bonus point for you. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email us, to text us, and we will get in contact with you. So we want to take a quick screenshot right now because, just for promotional purposes. So if everyone wants to turn on their camera, that would be amazing. Otherwise, we will take the screenshot in like 10 seconds. So everyone just get ready. Give me a second to stop sharing. All right. So if you guys want to turn on your cameras, feel free to do so now. Okay, are we ready? Yes, we are. All right. 3, 2, oh, okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming to today's event. We're going to be putting an audience feedback form in the chat for you guys, and we highly recommend that you fill that out for us so we can improve on our next event. Our next event will be happening on Monday, and that will be about the entrepreneurship field. The CEO of Paramount Fine Foods is coming over on Monday to speak about his experiences and how it led him to become a CEO today. We did really enjoy today's event, and we're so grateful that you guys all showed up. Monday will be the next event, as I said, so feel free to sign up for that. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time. And again, you guys have 3 entries in the giveaway. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Take care.
Oh, Kristine, could you stay back for just 1 minute?
Sure.
Yeah. Are we allowed to? Yes, you're allowed to sign up for as many events as you can.